You're listening to episode 148 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Micki Fine joins us to speak about her new children's mindfulness book, May All People and Pigs Be Happy. If you're listening to this podcast and find value and insights from what is shared here, know that this is made available from your generosity and the generosity of others like you. I want to thank those of you who are making monthly donations to keep this podcast going. And if you're not yet, please take a moment, go to presentmomentmindfulness.com and click on Make a Donation. One-time or especially monthly donations show you value this work, which can't happen without you. Thank you for your help, your support, and your kind generosity. Introducing a concept, let alone a practice, that can be as fraught with nuance as mindfulness, to adults can be very challenging. In some ways, that introduction can be made more accessible when sharing it with a younger audience who haven't yet formed solidified concepts of what mindfulness is. But it takes skill and talent to open that door with wisdom and integrity. Micki Fine Pavlicek is a longtime psychotherapist in private practice, a certified teacher of mindfulness-based stress reduction trained at the Center of Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts, a TEDx presenter, the founder of Mindful Living, and the author of The Need to Please, Mindfulness Skills to Gain Freedom from People-Pleasing and Approval-Seeking. She has taught mindfulness-based stress reduction and loving-kindness meditation since 1994 in a variety of settings, including her private practice, research environments, Rice University, the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and the Jung Center. Our guest today is Micki Fine. Micki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And it's so interesting, as I was preparing for this interview tonight, I noticed that you were a certified MBSR teacher through UMass,
Yes.
and realized that you and I have actually spoken before in getting you added to the certified listing of teachers through UMass. So very nice to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, and you.
So let's start by just having you tell us a bit about your background.
Okay. Grew up in Wichita, Kansas. Went to Catholic schools all my life, and in college I ended up majoring in accounting because my father was a CPA and my ex-spouse is a CPA, thus the book The Need to Please. And I became a CPA and worked in that capacity for several years. And in that time I started having a really hard time doing that work, and life was getting a little bit dizzying in a way. And so I've had several epiphanies, like all of a sudden I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I don't know, it's almost like I don't know where it comes from. So I went back to school and got a master's in counseling psych and became a licensed professional counselor. And during that time was tending to my own personal life and kind of growing up in a way. And during that process, I thought, well, actually, I was in therapy, and my therapist said, so what are you going to do to heal yourself? And out of my mouth came these words, I'm going to meditate. Well, I'm in Houston, Texas. There was nothing here. So I went to a women's bookstore and I got The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I practiced for several years by myself. And then I saw, as many, you may have done this as well, seen the Bill Moyer special on PBS, Healing in the Mind. And I saw John, they interviewed him, they showed him teaching, etc. And a hand came out of the television and grabbed me. And I said, I have to do this. And it wasn't like, bad girl, you have to do this, but man, this is it, right? So I, went through the training, and I think we were guinea pigs in the beginning in training. It's much more sophisticated now, and have taught now for 25 years, and just kind of never looked back. So I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it is the most wonderful work we can do. Thank you for sharing that story.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is wonderful work.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. And I did want to have a special thanks for Lorna Garano, who introduced us in this context on the book, May All People and Pigs Be Happy. Yes. And I wanted to start with just by asking you what prompted you to write a children's book, because that's a bit of a departure from what you've written before.
It is. It came to me during meditation. And I get ideas when I'm sitting there and watching the mind. And now this is kind of a funny story, but I'll tell it anyway. It's pretty personal. Many years ago, I was having a very difficult time. And at the time, Diana Winston was my teacher. And I was talking, I was talking with her one day, and I told her, I've been to this toy store and I saw this stuffed pig and I cannot get it out of my mind. And she said, Micki, you have to go get the pig. So I went and bought myself, here I am, way past even early adulthood, and I went and bought this pig for myself, and I was kind of embarrassed, and came home and showed it to my husband, and he said, I think you need that pig. So here's this pig, and we started kind of riffing with with this pig, and so somehow that combined with all sorts of things in my mind, and then during meditation, it was like, this is it. I'm going to write this book. And John can remember one morning we were meditating, and I opened my eyes and said, I'm going to write a children's book. He went, what? I get these wild ideas, and I just kind of go with them sometimes.
Going with those wild ideas is what led to this podcast, which is an idea that came to me while on the 7-day with John and Saki many years ago. So go with those ideas. I think I'm fully supported by this podcast. You mentioned John, your husband, John.
My husband, John.
And I wonder if you might just say a little bit about him, because he did what, as I'd mentioned before we started recording tonight, just what I find to be the beautiful illustrations in this book.
I will tell him that. First off, he's probably the kindest man I've ever met. He's a native Texan and has made a living doing art, creating art for over 40 years, actually in fine art, as opposed to illustration, but has done illustration, had done illustration in the past. And so when I started writing, I said, what if you just did a few illustrations? And it ended up that he illustrated the book. So he's represented by a gallery here called Gremion and Company. And his work is in all sorts of places around the country. And I don't know if it's outside of the country, but yeah.
Well, they're beautiful. He did a wonderful job on that. And I see in the credits he mentioned having a greater respect for those who do this particular kind of illustration. I imagine there was a bit of a learning curve for him in this particular context.
Yeah. And he worked on it for a very long time. And actually, when we got the contract for the book, they asked to make her smaller, like shorter, like she looked a little bit old. So he actually redid them, and this is the Claire that we see in the book now.
So I'm kind of curious. You had an idea that you're going to do this book, and it came in the process of meditation. Of course, creativity, I have found, and maybe some listeners have as well, really can get going when one is in practice. And I'm curious what kind of steered you in the direction of, okay, children's book, loving kindness, and how that crafted into the story you tell with the pig as well.
I'm not sure I can even tell you. uh, I know that it was actually just as Diana said. You need to go get the pig,
Mhm.
and I guess from that, somehow having that pig did something about opening my heart to some younger part of me, maybe. And I'm not sure I can even remember how it came up, except that I would have images of the stuffed pig, and a lot of my practice has been loving kindness, and it's very, very important to me, and I love teaching it and practicing it. So that certainly combined with children's book and loving kindness, and the place I come from, I needed that, and so I think it came from being a child and having a practice and having loving kindness be so important, and a stuffed pig.
Yeah. And it shows in the story that you tell with this. It struck me that you're very clearly articulating what the core, the heart of loving kindness practice is. And that is also one of the most complex things for people to wrap their hearts and minds around in practice, can be loving kindness. So I'm wondering what you found to be challenging or perhaps easy in translating these nuances and complexities of loving kindness into a children's book, because you did that beautifully. It's in there.
Thank you. So with the children's book, it has to be simple. It's for young, somewhere between 3 and 7 years old. So the nuances kind of don't, I didn't think they needed to be there. And I just thought it's just make it really plain. I wanted to go through the whole range of loving kindness from for oneself all the way to all beings. And little by little, the story got much of an answer, but that's what I got.
No, no, that's okay. So it's interesting as I go through the book and I have it here, and your main character, Claire, has had a fight, not, alert, spoiler alert here.
Yeah.
Claire's had a hard time. And Piggelina asks, this is what I found this very interesting, asks if it's okay, maybe we could try something.
Yeah.
So there's that permission given. And of course, we do this in MBSR, is making sure this is okay to try. And it begins with an awareness of the breath, awareness of
Yes.
the body. So there's a connection into right now. And so there's some intentionality in building in these structures that as adults we may think of in a different way, but you've built them into the storyline itself. And from that, you went into recitations around that. And I'm wondering, how was it for you in putting that together? Was there some intentionality around, first there's got to be, is this okay? And then I got to do some grounding, and how am I going to do that? And then we move on to the recitations. What was that like for you?
I thought it was important to ground it in the present moment. And the breath obviously is the place where that is typically taught. And so that Claire could still herself in some way and then be open to the phrases. And obviously those things both go together. Loving kindness can help us to settle our mind, to be able to concentrate, and being with the breath a little bit can open us to this moment and having the past be the past. And so, yeah, I just thought it was important to begin with that.
It is. And from that, Claire has encounters. So it grows into, she goes to sleep that night after doing the first recitation, and then seeing her parents and noticing how she's feeling, and then going into the next. And then she goes out and about and sees some other people and goes into the next part of it and greater noticing. So there's progress here.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like is that at some point she knew what to do in the place where the driver honks at her.
Right. Right.
She knew what to do. And so there's our own learning from the practice and I wanted to have some some indication that we have that inside of us already. If it arises with some help, it's like, oh, I know what to do now. So,
and it was nicely refreshed there that she was able to do it on her own.
yeah,
That little bit of encouragement that she got from Pigolina, and then on her own starting to grow the yous that she's talking to a wider group, to the class at their school. And so there's this broadening of it, and how this then really grows into the world. And so as you're going into this wider arc, did you ever run into maybe some doubts or questions for yourself about just how to honor really this big thing, this important thing you're trying to convey?
in terms of the story,
Yeah.
the story evolved kind of a little bit by a little bit, and it certainly didn't come well formed at all, and I did wonder, okay, how are we going to get from the loving kindness toward the little girl who was mean to Claire to all beings? That's a big leap. And I've always, I think that for many of us, it makes sense to add, to start where we are, and to practice loving kindness to a group, or people in our town, or people in Texas, or people in the United, you can start anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of being able to offer to all beings in the beginning, for most people, is like, it seems more cognitive than, we open to this. Maybe that happens for some people. Excuse me. But somehow it came to me to do we could offer loving kindness to the classroom, and then the whole school, and then the scene about the dream.
Yeah, and that brought it in, that made it more personal, that as your main character is feeling this herself, it's very personal from the very beginning, and comes out of difficulty as well. And that this is a response to difficulties that she finds in her life.
Yeah.
So what's the response been to the book? What have you heard so far?
Well, here in Houston, I know I have lots of colleagues, lots of friends, and of course, they're all like, oh, this is wonderful, right? And so here in Houston, I have probably 12 events for when the book comes out. Different bookstores, toy stores, some churches, and so that's going really well. We've got some social media. I've met through this. I'd never been on social media before until wanting to move out into loving kindness and children's issues, and I've met a whole big group of Irish women. So they're just high on this book, and they're excited about it. And I'm a new teacher mentor at UC San Diego, and so I have a mentee in South Africa and one in Singapore, and they're saying, I'm selling your book. I'm like, yay. So, and in terms of nationally here in the States, there's been some interest, but and this is where my practice comes in, of what I really want to have happen and letting go. Okay, this is not mine. I can't do all of this. And the publisher is a nonprofit publisher, but they're distributed by Penguin Random House, so it has a likelihood of the ability to have a wide distribution. And so for this publisher to hire a publicist on the book I thought it was kind of a sign that they really liked it, and they've always said that. And she's going to work on the book through the end of January, which is kind of unusual, I think. So we're hoping that something happens to help it travel out into the world, because I think, and I'm prejudiced. It's the work of my heart, and I really would love to see a really gentle and accessible way for children Buddhist or non-Buddhist,
right.
Christian, non-Christian,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of way of thinking and any kind of spirituality, to be able to have those words in their head. Oh, may I be safe? May I be happy? May I feel love? And I think about the violence in the world now, and how the challenges of being a child now, and the bullying, and I think and just regular life, we create these inner critics that are really mean. And to have something else to water the seeds of loving kindness for a child, if we had that as children, I can't imagine what that would be like, right? To have that in your mind and in your heart. And one of the pictures in the book, as she passes the familiar stranger, she says, Claire didn't know that she could love someone she didn't know. And I think, what better message? That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, one other thing I do want to share is that you also, for people who are interested in listening to this, who'd like to find out more, of course, I'm going to have links to this book and others that Micki has written. There's also a website, livingmindfully.org. Do I have that correct, Micki? Maybe you could say just a little bit about that too.
The website itself?
Sure, yeah, please.
The website tells some about mindfulness in general. It tells my background. It has information about May All People and Pigs Be Happy. And if anybody's interested, on that page, there's a press kit that you can open and download. And if you want to take a longer look at it or share it with someone, and information about my other book called The Need to Please, and then all about my courses, retreats, and things like that.
Thank you. Well, our guest today has been Micki Fine. Micki, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Glad to. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.